Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of Business Source. Today I'm joined by Loren Jenkins of Sellativity. Loren is a business and performance coach and also a qualified yoga instructor. Loren, thank you for joining me today. Hope you're well. How's things?
Well, apart from a few little ripples on the technology earlier, which we had some fun and games about, everything's goodly, and it's very kind of you to welcome me along to what I think is a really good resource that you've put together. So thank you very much for asking me.
No problem at all. I thought it was a very pertinent subject considering this crazy, messed up world that we're all in right now. And I wanted to get your insights and thoughts on maybe some from your own personal experience, but things that perhaps some of the viewers and listeners can use and adapt into their daily life, techniques, etc., that can really help de-fuzz this craziness that's going on. Going from, hey, I'm doing my daily commute every day, in the car, on the train, on the tube, on the ferry, whatever it is, on the bike, going into an office daily, into, oh my goodness, we are all at home. And not only am I at home, but I'm also with potentially housemates, partners, husband, kids, and another. There's all manner of different dynamics that all of a sudden just, the norm became not the norm. And so I'm really keen to hear your perspective on things, on just how that transition perhaps could have or can affect people, and just what they can potentially do themselves to support their own mental well-being. And I'm more than happy to share my own experiences. Of course, I'll kind of start off, if I may. And I work from home predominantly. I go and see clients in their offices, but more often than not, I work from home. I'm used to an empty house. I'm not used to commuting, and all of a sudden, lockdown, and now we have my wife at home. We have our small child under the age of 1 at the time. We have the nanny and her child bubbled, and all of a sudden there's lots of stuff going on in the house that I'm not used to. So whilst I'm used to that quietness, all of a sudden it now wasn't quiet. I guess that's the reverse of a lot of people's daily experiences, of particularly the commute and the office and the buzz and everything going on. All of a sudden it became quiet. So yeah, keen to get your thoughts on that, and yeah,
Okay.
let's hear it.
So there's a lot there. You opened with a lot,
Yeah.
but it actually encompasses what we're all experiencing, I think, at the moment. But just for a moment, I'd just like to have a little moment of respect to this situation that we're all going through, and to those that have been affected acutely with it, both from maybe losing somebody, maybe their own health being detrimented, if you will, and then also for those that are around them and experiencing that, maybe some grief, maybe some pain around all of that. And so I just want to share a little bit of respect to that situation and those individual situations, because we can actually look at this as a very global pandemic, and now we're hearing it every day. There is a risk that we might become insensitive to the real individual stories. So I just wanted to share that at the top of this call. I think your example and your bullet points of the fuzzy head, you might be going to the car, the commute, work, children, challenges. We've all got flavors of that, haven't we? And for some, are worse than others. You know, if we were living in a high rise, maybe with cladding that hasn't been rectified yet, as opposed to living in a leafy suburb. I'm very grateful. I'm looking over the river as we speak, so I'm very grateful for that. I can open my doors, open my windows, and I've got nature, which I think is very important at this moment. But just to wind back a little bit, Lee, and what possibly maybe why you asked me, but why this possibly resonates with me is I spent 25 plus years in the city with software companies, with finance companies, and also being with a big desire and ego to be number one. And to cut a very long story short, I became unhealthy to the extent that it affected both my physical and my mental well-being. To the extent on the physical side, I ended up having operations for holes in my stomach. My kidneys were not functioning well. They wanted to operate my neck, but I called time out on that one. And I eventually had, I was on about 6 or 7 different medications.
Sounds like severe burnout.
It was severe and it was burnout, but I tried to keep it going. And I think, given that this is a business source podcast, when we're trying to get back into a routine now, having had 6 months of a strange living, and we're going to continue to have strange living, but as entrepreneurial business leaders, we want to be successful. But I think what's got to be kept in mind at the moment, and mind being a bit of a clue here, but being kept in mind at the moment is we can only go so fast as either the market or the clients or the opportunities and also our own balance of well-being can or will allow. Otherwise, we might get into a situation that I had.
Yeah, I think you and I have spoken about this bit before, you know, and the analogy that I think I shared with you of everyone was going at 100 miles an hour, and all of a sudden we all hit a brick wall and doing 0. You know, call it having a crash if you want, but it was instant. You know, it wasn't like we had time to get used to the idea of all of this. We had our busy lives and we knew what we were doing. We had our routines. And literally, boom, we hit that brick wall. And now it feels like, well, do I really want to be doing 100 mile an hour again? You know, is that what I want? And the people that I've been chatting with have kind of said, well, do you know what? I think I'm slightly reevaluating that. You know, it was great at the time, and that's what I thought I wanted at the time and was going to make me happy and successful. But now I've spent all this time at home with the kids, you know, or, you know, speaking with family more frequently, if lucky enough, you know, spending time in nature and exercising, getting good sleep and rest. You kind of think to yourself, well, oh my goodness, do I really want to go back to that environment I was in before? So where's 50 miles an hour? What does 50 miles an hour look like? Because I want to be able to wind that window down on the car and smell the fresh air, and, you know, something you can't do when you're doing 100 kind of thing. So it's interesting about how we try and find that balance between where we were at the 100, the 0 nobody wants, and, you know, what does 50 miles an hour look like? So yeah, this is something I'm trying to balance with myself.
Well, I think you're a keen tennis player and golfer, right?
Indeed, yeah.
Okay, so that's how you get your balance, isn't it? I mean, maybe can you share with me how you blend, just so I get a bit of a take on how you're doing this, or trying to find some equilibrium, if you will. Another clue there with that word. I'll come back to that. But how are you doing it from a work perspective and getting out and either playing tennis or playing golf? What happens when you go and play golf, for example?
Yeah, I'll share the golf one first, because the two are very different. And I've been playing golf for over 20 years. But I think at the weekend I play early morning. My brain's all clear. You know, I haven't had the business day going on in my head. I spend the morning at home. You know, I'll wake up with the baby and you know, do some family stuff, and then I'll head to the course. Typically, you know, pre-lockdown, you know, an hour before, so I'm nice and relaxed. Get a bit of breakfast at the course, do some stretching, warming up, chipping, putting, go to the first tee, and my mind is nice and calm. If I think about if I play midweek and if I'm lucky enough to get out, you know, finish work early and go and play, my mind is all over the place, and I don't have that hour to get to the course early and stretch and warm up. And it literally almost is a case of screeching into the car park, open the boot, chuck everything on the trolley, go and have a quick couple of putts, you know, quick on the first tee, swinging over 5-iron, and off we go. And invariably it takes me 6, 7, 8 holes to get into it, not only to get the golf swing going, but to quiet my mind down, to focus, by which time most likely I'm already well over par. And then, you know, you've got the downward spiral of, oh my goodness, I'm still struggling to quiet my brain down from the business stuff, and now I've got, oh my goodness, I'm well over par on my handicap. So that's the golf experience. The tennis one I've only been into for 2 years now, but what I'm finding with that is I play early in the morning, again, when my mind is clear. But even if I do go and play it, let's say I'm able to go and play an hour of a lunchtime, I find that it's impossible to think about the work stuff whilst I'm playing tennis. I maybe continue thinking about it for the first 5 or 6 minutes while we're having a warm up, but then you can't think about anything other than the game that you're playing. It's too quick. The ball's, you know, you've hit it over. You can't stand there and think, hey, you know, I've really got to send that email, because all of a sudden, donk, the ball's hit you. You know, it's far too quick, which I really like, because you get the physical exercise, and so you feel invigorated, but also your mind is at rest. Even though you might, you know, some people get stressed and angry at the tennis, you're not thinking about the workload and all the stuff that's on your shoulders before getting to tennis. So that's my experience with it.
Okay, so we might be more materially wealthy. I don't know how that works actually, because no matter how much you earn, one always seems to live past, doesn't it? You know, the advertising of buying something else, or you know, you've got a flexible friend to pay with, or whatever else, you know.
Well, interestingly enough, golf is not a game of perfect.
Okay.
And a particular quote here says, reference to happiness. I realized that happiness had more to do with what you did with what you had than what you had. So that was something that really kind of resonated with me. You know, rather than focusing on more, use what you've got.
Okay, so that's about detachment, and I'll come on to that. So we've got the mind, we've got equilibrium, and we've got detachment. So the story about your golf is quite an interesting one, with respect for, you know, the fact that we're busy business guys of all genders and persuasions. If you could take 5 minutes when you got to the car park outside the golf course, and if you could wind the windows down just a little bit so you got a bit of flow of air, and if you could get your feet parallel, your knees parallel, and possibly either just sitting with your hands on your knees, with your hands open, facing upwards, just naturally, nothing forced here, and allow the chin to come down slightly, so you've got an extension of the back of the neck, and you close your eyes just very gently. And if you breathe just at the tip of the nostrils, so you feel the cooler air coming in at the tip of the nostrils, what you'll do then is start to balance the two main nervous systems. One's a sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, rush, rush, rush. And the other one is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relax and restore. And in business, And when we've got a heightened state of anxiety, maybe with this global situation, maybe with trying to get our businesses going again, keeping them going again, and pushing forward, we've got a lot of adrenaline going. We've got a lot of fight or flight going on. That's what happened to me. I had that going on for a number of years, and what happens is it starts to send triggers to the brain. It creates emotions, and depending on those emotions, then chemicals, natural chemicals, are released into the body. And if we have those chemicals flowing around our body all the time, it actually starts to create dis-ease within the body. You put those together, it can create disease. So if we can take a few moments, we get to the golf course, take 5 minutes, wind the windows down a little bit of fresh air, ground your feet, ground your knees, ground your hands, chin down slightly, extend the back of the neck, close the eyes nice and softly, and breathe at the tip of the nostrils. Just maybe 10 breaths without any force. We're not trying to fill the lungs, just feel the coolness of the inhalation, and then the exhalation is slightly longer, just to extend the exhalation. Then what we'll do is we'll find that naturally the fight and flight mechanism starts to get balance with the relax and restore, and we find we get a little bit of equilibrium. And if we can do that, and then as we come out of those few breaths which aren't forced, just natural breath at the tip of the nostrils, keeping our head sort of slightly lower and our eyes just looking down, we just open the eyes softly, and then we come back into what we're doing. And then we go and get our golf clubs from the back of the car or wherever, and we walk with a steady pace to the golf club, and then go through that scenario you mentioned at the clubhouse. We get onto the tee. What you're doing, you might find that instead of waiting until the 5th or the 6th hole to get into the zone of your golf, it might start, even if it started on hole 3, then you've got 100% greater performance there. And it reminds me of if I may, it just reminds me of a little story of a deer, a baby deer. What's this got to do with business? And this baby deer was born, and it just smelled this beautiful smell, and it looked at it all around, and it couldn't find it, and it started rushing everywhere. And we can do this in business. We can think, oh, what's the next thing to do? We're all rushy, adrenaline pumping, fight or flight responses. And it's jumping around, all happy and all doughy, like I think of Bambi, before, within the first 5 minutes. And it's jumping around, and it's wondering where this beautiful smell is. And then it can't find it, and exhausted after an hour of jumping around, it goes to its mom, its pop, and says, I've been looking for this beautiful smell, and I just can't find it. And they both look at each other, and the dad says, hey, son, said, well, it's actually in the middle of your forehead. You've actually been looking for it elsewhere, and fundamentally is within you already, this beautiful smell, this beautiful flavor, this beautiful experience. And for us, it's all in the breath. So there's one thing that we could actually take away from this 20 minutes or so, is if we can focus on the breath without forcing it, we can actually bring our fight and flight and our relax and restore systems into some sort of balance very quickly, to find equilibrium, which also not only will help us with our golf swing, but if you take somebody like Federer, I'd use Federer in tennis. He gets into a zone where they say he doesn't sweat, but I have seen him sweat, but he doesn't sweat very much, but he gets into a zone. He gets into a zone by getting his nervous system in some sort of balance. And from a health perspective, if we can get our nervous systems in some sort of balance, just for this very quick session using the breath, it also promotes healthy immune system, which is very much needed at the moment. So I don't know whether that resonates to you, because if I was to ask you to take a deep breath, as I do with a lot of people in my classes, or when I help them one-to-one, I say, take a deep breath, and what immediately happens is this. Yeah, the shoulders come up, and we're breathing into this much of our lung capacity, yeah, and we've got all of this lung capacity. So what we're doing is we're not only not inflating in a smooth and sensible and optimal way, what we're doing is we're not getting rid of the stale air, which can actually have dust particles and can also cause us to get a little bit of illness going on. And we need to get rid of that stuff at the moment.
Oh. All right, bring it back from a business leader's perspective. You know, thinking about running Connecting Business as I do, and the responsibilities that I have, that's to the business, and you know, part of that business is its employees, partners, clients, everything like that that are associated with that business. It feels like I've got multiple different areas that I have to be aware of, which can, you know, fill my mind with thoughts, and you're trying to do the best for everybody. I guess undertone of what I'm hearing there is one can take care of everything else, but one must take care of oneself first. So if I'm healthy, it enables me to be the best I can for my staff, for my partners, for my clients, making sure that I'm delivering at my best. You know, if I fail to take care of myself and take those minutes before getting on a client call, for example, there's no point jumping straight from one call to another. If I just took those 5 minutes to do that breathing, for example, where I turned away from my millions of screens that I've got here, quieten the mind down, quieten the breathing down, and just sort of found that equilibrium, I can go into that new call fresher than I would have done otherwise. So there's that side of things which I'm taking from what you're saying there. But interestingly, you know, I think employers feel now a greater sense of responsibility towards employees and their mental, physical well-being. And so it feels like we should be more aware of that, and start to think about what we can be doing as a business to try and support people mentally and physically, and also so it's not just about providing money to, you know, let people go and do a sport or yoga or whatever it is, or get it. You know, I think the one that most companies did was they used to bring a massage company in. You'd sit in an office corner somewhere, and you'd have a 15-minute massage, then back to your desk. Well, yeah, it felt great at the time, but you know, you're back at your desk immediately, and the tension's all there. So I wonder if maybe, you know, if there's any things that you can share that businesses and leaders can do to support staff.
So the first thing is you've got to look after yourself, and the reason for that is there's only one captain in the ship. So if you're the MD or the CEO and you're not optimally performing, and I don't mean that in an 80s way where you're just like, you know, running. We've talked about that, running at sort of a 99 miles an hour, because you will burn out. But if you're not balanced in the way that you are looking after your own well-being from a physical, physiological, mental, and all the other aspects that we could go into, then you're going to become ill. But also, if you're starting to take care of yourself in a more holistic way, and I'm not saying you're not, but I'm just sort of putting it out there, if we start to take more care of ourselves in a more holistic way, then that will naturally ripple down, and people will start to feel a different, I'll use the word energy, a different sense from you, that one might not react so much, one might be more listening, be able to listen more, etc. So the first thing is absolutely hit the nail on the head. Look after yourself first. Also, when it comes to business, we think about performance individually and team. Now, there's a lot of work being done on team performance, and you can look at maybe gold medal rowing teams and that sort of scenario. But what you might want to think about is putting some time aside where you could actually get online together. And I do this with people I help. But you can get online together, and rather than just talking about business, you could actually say, right, okay, why don't we just have a little session about how we're all doing? You know, I'll kick off. You know, I had trouble with my tech this morning, and whatever it is, yeah, because it allows people to be themselves. It allows them to be human. It allows them to be relaxed. If that goes reasonably well, then you could actually take it further and say, I've been doing this breathing stuff. It's like really weird, right? We don't have to spend any money, but we can just breathe. But if you can learn how to breathe in a certain way, it can really help me to feel more grounded. Oh, and by the way, it's not just people get a little bit scared about this stuff, because you start talking about energy, you start talking about yoga, and they've got a prefixed idea. But if we could say that, and if we could share that, it helps me to feel better in myself. It helps me to make clearer decisions. It helps me with all sorts of things, my relationships at work and at home with my family. I'm going to share some of that with you. Would you like to have some of those outputs? Some will like it and some won't. Yeah.
Yeah, I get the sense there that if you can show that you're doing all you can in order to remain healthy, mentally refreshed, mentally charged, you're doing the right things so that you're not going all over the shop. You know, as a leader, not only yourself, you're bound to make mistakes in that mentality. But if we can quieten that mind down and share with others what we're doing in order to keep that stability, it instills confidence. You know, if you think about as an employee, if you saw your boss having a real wobbly on a conference call, on the the all hands or the town hall or whatever,
or the bank manager
these days, it doesn't instill confidence. And then you start panicking, and then all of a sudden you've got your own internal downward spiral of, oh my goodness, if he's panicking, should I be worried? Oh my goodness, I'm not going to get paid, I can't pay my rent, and oh, down and down it goes. That's where I want to share the second book, which is Mind Power, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life, by James Forbes. So this is a book that I first bought many years ago. And I guess, I mean, there's lots of stuff in there. The simple bit that I want to share with you that might help is, if you read that book, it will help you visualize a light switch. Get to the point where you're able to say, I'm thinking in this way, how can I change? Well, I need to simplify it down to, I'm going to flick this light switch and think a different way. Now, it takes a while to be able to get mentally strong to be able to do that, and there's stuff in the book that will help you with that, but that certainly helped me. And my first business book, Peter Jones Tycoon, which, I mean, I really like the guy, like him or not. What he gave me was a path to remain focused, so that my mind wasn't going off all over the shop. It's okay to think about the end goal, and in fact, that's brilliant. But there's so many steps in between the end goal and where you are now that it can become overwhelming. And that's what I was finding at the time, and I was struggling to find a way in which I could structure the way I needed to think in order to get to the end goal. And that book, Tycoon, really helped me with that. You know, think about that end goal and work it backwards. What does it take to become a professional tennis player, let's say? You know, well, in order to get to that last step and be a pro, I need to do this. And then what does it take to do that? And work it all the way back to where you are now, so that you know what those steps are. So that book really helped me. So I highly recommend that one.
So brilliant. And seeing as you're sharing, I want to say something about books and reading, but regarding breathing, maybe you're going to post this, yeah, because there's a TED talk done by I think it's London School of Economics or Business, with a yoga teacher that I follow, and maybe you can include it in a clip, and it talks about a little bit about breathing. But as soon as we're sharing books, this book, it shows that it's the human body book. It tells us we've got 11 body systems within this one human body. Then I'll show you this book. It's about superfoods, because if we can get good sleep but also eat healthily, we're really onto a good path. That's by David Wolfe. He's in the States. I'll then share this book, A Life Worth Breathing by Max Strom. Highly recommend it. Talks about techniques of breathing. But if you want to go further, you can go on to something called pranayama, which is breathing techniques from yoga going back eons of years. And then that all leads to potentially His Royal Highness, the Dalai Lama, and the Art of Happiness.
Right.
And these are all underpinned, whatever you follow, you get to the apex of anything, and it all points to the tenets of Buddhism or yoga, very tightly aligned. And then you get to a great book on yoga, which is Light on Yoga by BKS Iyengar. And I can go further. And the reason I put them in that order is because we work at the external physical level, and then we can go deeper, 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 deeper. But the one thing I'd urge us to be very careful of is not to intellectualize this, because we can read a lot of stuff and we can do a lot of stuff, but I guarantee you, actually, from personal experience, I guarantee you that if we didn't have any of this stuff and we didn't have any of these books, if we just found a quiet place to be able to sit, and the whole purpose of yoga, by the way, and all of the poses and postures that people see on Instagram, if you're into that sort of thing, is to make our body capable of sitting. Usually sitting not in a chair, because that can actually affect us, the structure of our physiology, but to sit and to be still and to be quiet, and then to focus on the breath. And it comes down to the one thing that I'll probably finish on, actually, with respect to the time that you have set for this. If we can find the way to make our body able to sit in a steady and comfortable posture, in Sanskrit it's Sthira Sukha Asanam, then we get to the point of going through the 8 limbs of the noble path of yoga, which we get to something called detachment. And we get to detachment through the ability to control the monkey mind. Dr. Steve Peters, who helped Ronnie O'Sullivan not lose it whilst he was playing World Championship snooker on TV and walk off, is to do something what's in yoga is called, in Sanskrit, it's Chitta Vritti Narudaha. And what it is the stilling of the disturbances of the mind stuff. Because the monkey jumps from one thing to another, to another, to another, the monkey mind. If we can still the disturbances of the mind stuff, then we gain access to the infinite source of health. It takes a long time to get there, but we get to the infinite source of health and well-being, topic of this show. And the infinite source of well-being is all about being well. And if we can find the way to detachment from the latest watch or app or car or this or that or the other, which are all external and all very nice to have, you know, watches and jewelry and all that sort of stuff. But if we can find a way of not being attached to them, so therefore if the watch went, the car went, the house went, and still have a level of well-being, then we're starting to get into a position whereby even if we do get a phone call from the bank manager that isn't a good one, we can deal with it. If we've got a sales guy that isn't performing, we don't need to raise our voice and shout. We just need to understand, what is it that I am not doing to help this person? If the numbers on the lead generation isn't happening, then let's look at that process. And that book you mentioned is fantastic, looking back from the end goal, looking back. What steps do we need to take? But we're doing it, and finishing on this, we're doing it not from a reaction, quick sort of, monkey mind scenario.
Yeah.
But if we use the breath to calm our nervous systems, to find equilibrium, we can take a step back, take a time out, and we can just consider for a moment without reacting. We can consider for a moment, what's the right thing to do here? And then decide on how to respond to the situation.
Brilliant.
I'll probably leave that there for now.
Yeah. So I guess for myself, be healthy myself. That's the foundation of me being healthy and happy internally. I can enjoy the things that I do have, but don't be attached to them. But also in my business life, so long as if I take care of myself, it will enable me to help all those around me, clients, partners, employees. And I think the employee side of thing, I think the bit you mentioned there about the firing immediately when somebody doesn't perform, I think that's really there's a big shift now changed with that. There's more of an awareness now of, well, did I set them up to fail, or did I set them up for success? What plan did I put in place? How did I support them? Because it's not just sitting on listening into calls and coaching that way. There's a whole manner of different things that we can do to support our staff through it. Yeah, so there's a lot to think about there. Some great books there, Loren. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate your time.
I just wanted to say one thing, and you just finished there on that sentence, time. Whenever I help people and I say, well, how about sort of, practicing some breathing or sitting quietly or this, that, and the other, I don't have any time. Oh, okay. So how many apps you got on your phone? How often are you looking at your phone? Do you have Netflix? Do you have Amazon Prime? Do you have iPlayer? How many times are you watching those box sets? What time do you? So we've got time, and the best time for doing this stuff, by the way, is early in the morning. So I know you walk. You've got a lovely dog, haven't you? If you go and walk your dog out in nature at 6:30 or 6 in the morning, and it's okay for him to be off the lead, then you could find a tree stump somewhere. You could sit on that, and you could actually just do what I've been suggesting, like you could do in the car before golf. And you can just take a few moments just to practice that breathing. And if you did that every day for a month, you'll notice a difference. So I hope some of these things have been helpful. And if anybody wants to expand on this, then I'm more than happy to help them.
Fantastic. Thanks. And that concludes this episode of Business Source. Thanks, everyone.